sharing the same system functionality. Through this change, there are going to be more timely product enhancements. So the ease of market, a lot more quick there, so you won't have to wait as long for changes or product enhancements to come across to you. It's going to be an overall ease of doing business, both for you as the rep and for your clients doing business with us. So better clients experience, right? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kim Aker, and I'm on the agency training team here at the home office. Obviously, I'm not alone up here. There's a few other folks that are on screen with me, so I want to highlight them right now. I'm joined by Lindsay McCormick and Tom Potter. They are going to be our experts taking a bulk of the questions today that you might have related to your auto conversion. Okay, so we're with the auto product team. I also have Rachel too with me on screen, and Rachel's going to get into this policy consolidation questions. And I know that there's always several of those questions that are coming across in these sessions. So I'm really excited to have you with us too today, Rachel. And in the background, I'm joined by a colleague of mine, Nicole Good, is here today. Nicole's going to help me with all of your questions that you're going to submit. So a couple things I want to highlight for housekeeping. You won't have the ability to come off mute, okay? You can't turn on your camera. So raising your hand will really do no good. The way to get your questions answered today is to take advantage of our Q&A feature, which is the upper right-hand corner of your Teams toolbox here. So you want to get the Q&A box opened up right now, because that's how you're going to be able to submit your questions today. All right. So let's go ahead and look at the agenda as we get things started here. Today, of course, the bulk of this is to answer your questions. What's on your mind? How can we help you most effectively and efficiently migrate your clients from one system to the other? Really good experience, right? So we're talking about whatever the product differences might be that you're curious about, the conversion process specifically that you might have questions about for your clients, any cleanup tasks or other things that might pop up as these policies convert. However, I want to just call out right now that this is not a session for the rate discussions. So rate increases or rate specific questions are actually handled on the market level by your PLMX. So if you're not sure who your personalized market manager are or is, we will have a link for you by the end of the session or put in contact when we have those rate specific questions. Okay, I want to make sure you know where to go to get what you need, including those questions answered. But for any of you that have billing questions or auto conversion questions related to this version, certainly please submit those into the chat and we'll do our best to get those answered for you. Okay, so before we dive into the Q&A, obviously we have a timeline I want to show you first. And then we'll give you time at the very end for the resources that I'll walk you through our SharePoint site for the auto conversion. Okay, so here we go into the timeline. And I'm sure you've all seen this before, but we wanted to share it one more time. This roadmap offers details on what states are converting and when. Although policies did begin to convert in January of this year, the pre-conversion activities have started months before going back into 2024. In order to provide uninterrupted coverage for your clients during this process, you're really encouraged to review your Tableau client listings. Okay? This is going to allow for that timely action that you're going to need to do to help minimize any coverage interruptions. Okay, so your Tableau client listings will also be included in the resources at the end of this session, but that's where you want to go to take a look at what you got to do. How you can help minimize this coverage interruptions. Okay, so you came to ask questions. I don't want to delay you any further. I'm going to move forward into the Q&A portion of this session. And as we do, just a reminder, you're going to need to use the Q&A box. So if you just joined us and didn't hear me in that spiel a few moments ago, please go ahead and get the Q&A feature opened up on your screen. It's different from the chat. We don't use the chat in this session either, but the Q&A is where you can ask your questions or start a discussion there. Okay, and right now, I want to open up the floor to Lindsay and Tom. Is there anything that we should know as we begin this session and wait for these questions to start coming in? As far as any updates or other auto conversion related things you want to give us as we begin today?
Yeah, thanks, Kim.
Yeah.
So obviously conversion has been a large effort across the organization. And so myself and a team of highly skilled individuals along with agency partnership have really put in a lot of work into the success of conversion. And while we know it's not perfect, and it probably won't be, we couldn't wait for it to be perfect, or we probably would never convert. I wanted to share some of the positives as we're waiting for questions to come in, and kind of the state of conversion, if you will. So for Arizona, that was our first state of this new wave. So we already had 6 states converted. Arizona is over 99% complete, and there's less than 50 policies that are annual term left to convert. So that'll be a huge milestone once we get through that here in January. So huge progress, lots of learnings from that. And so really, this is the time that we are in the thick of it, because all of our states that were remaining are at some phase of conversion. So our Wave 1B states, such as Alaska, Kansas, Missouri, Oregon, and Tennessee, they're about 40% done. And so that's awesome. We're almost to the halfway mark. And then our last wave, our states have to go through: Alabama, Georgia, Illinois, Nevada, Oklahoma, and Wisconsin. They just started with renewals here in September. But the really big win that we have there is that we're about 50% done with the cleanup. So you mentioned the cleanup efforts in the beginning of this call. We're about halfway done with that. So we're on the downhill swing of things in that last wave of states. So when you look holistically at conversion, we're around 16-ish% done overall, because a lot of our volume is in the last wave of states that still need to go with Illinois. So we're just shy of 3,000 policies. But the biggest point I wanted to hit on before we hit questions is that about 94% of those are going straight through, and we're working daily to try to get that number higher so that they don't have to be touched by an underwriter or someone here in the home office. So we're really excited about that. So as we know, there's a handful in that 6% that still probably need some sort of intervention from underwriting and may result in information needed from the reps to handle those. But just wanted to give a shout out that right now is probably, if there's going to be a pain point, it would probably be now, because we have everything in flight. But we acknowledge that we're kind of at the peak, and we should be on the downhill swing of things here shortly. So if you're feeling the burden out in the field, just know there's an end in sight where it should alleviate some of that soon. So I think we've got some questions coming in now.
Thank you for that. I'll pause there. That was a really, really impactful update there. So thank you for sharing those stats. It sounds like only being at 60% in, but 94% going right through. That's a huge win. So huge undertaking. Thank you so much. All right, our first question, Sherry: will the umbrella discount automatically be added at conversion, or is that a manual process?
The property casualty products and life health products are automatically populated into what I call the cross product grid on that additional information page. As soon as you open a policy, you will see that the umbrella policies are included in that list and will be automatically included in that multi-policy discount calculation. There are 2 discounts that aren't automatically added. That's Driver IQ, which requires enrollment, and the Associates Good Student Discount, because we didn't have that information in Legacy. if either of those two discounts need to be added, those are the manual ones. So driver IQ and associates good student discount, all the other discounts, rating factors are automatically applied with the conversion renewal.
Thank you, Tom, for clarifying that. Okay, next question comes from Suzanne. Are there reports available to identify policies converting that could consolidate into a policy that already converted?
We do have the split policy council listing for multiple auto policies, so it should show the legacy book and the PAS book as well. I would have to check and see if there's one policy in legacy and one in PAS. I would probably have to check and see if there's a gap there. If someone has an example of it where that's not showing, they can send it to me directly and I'll take a look and see what we can get there. But otherwise, those reports are out there. Go to the policy consolidation website and click into the Tableau. It'll have 2 views.
You're Rachel. The next question I see is from Margot, related to rate capping. So new vehicles were added coverage, pardon me, they're no longer capped. Does it take the cap off of the new vehicle or the whole policy? Added coverage, is the cap taken off the entire vehicle or just the added coverage? And then when is the best time to do company to company rewrites? If the sender is removed, I can't say that word, removes the rate cap. So want to speak to rate capping a little bit there, Tom?
Yeah, so there's this is I'll call it like a little bit of a complex, process at Country. And what she's referring to is how a policy rate, how the capping is calculated. And it is calculated, coverages on like a conversion renewal, for example. And if you make a policy change and you add a new vehicle or you add a new coverage, just the vehicle that's added or just the new coverage that's added has an individual 1 factor, and the other capping factors that apply to the policy before you add that vehicle or coverage will remain on the policy. So you'll have a mix of capped vehicles and uncapped vehicles on the policy, or capped coverages and uncapped coverages. So only the new additions will have basically a 1 cap, and the others will remain in place. So that's how that capping works. And then the company to company rewrite, that's a little bit more complicated because it's hard for the reps to know whether or not the policy is capped. Because it's not immediately visible on a screen that's rep facing as of today, Lindsay. I mean, that's a future enhancement that we're researching. But yeah, if you feel like you quote that company to company rewrite and it's not providing the premium, savings that you would expect, it may be because for example, the mutual policy that you were quoting had a pretty significant cap on it. So that's the advice I can give you. You may want to wait until, like after 6 months to, after that first renewal comes out after convergence, or the second renewal to do the company rewrite, but it's really quotable and then purchasable.
Thank you for that. Next up, I have Felicia. I just started here at this point in Arizona. Am I working in legacy or am I in the PAS audit system?
You're in PAS for 99% of the policies. If you make a policy change on one of those less than 50 policies where there's an annual, it will take you to the legacy system from the navigator screen. So very, very few in Arizona remain.
So it would only be if you inherited a policy that happens to still be out there. It should be rare.
Yours, right, new business, you should be in the new system.
Yes.
Okay, great. Our next question comes from Sarah. On the legacy split policy listing, why are some farms listed as eligible while others are not?
So in legacy, especially for farms, there's not gonna be a lot they can do because we have the max vehicle restriction, we have the seasonal vehicle restriction, different writing companies. So there should be guidelines either on the definitions page somewhere in it that says those are not eligible because of that. Most of those will probably be eligible as they go over to PAS because we don't have all of those system constraints.
Thank you. All right, so the next question, which I know is on many people's mind, what is the timeline for Washington, right? BJ's asking, I know that I'm from Washington, so I can sympathize. It's not typically country, holding up with the delay there. So do we have any updates yet? Or anything to provide on Washington?
We're getting ready to respond to our third round of questions from the Office of Insurance in Washington. But based on those questions, we anticipate there may be an additional round. We're hoping to receive approval by October so that we could have an implementation near the end of the first quarter, or maybe slightly into the second quarter of 2026 for Washington.
Thank you. Okay. All right, Lori's question is, when is the best time to do policy consolidations? Clients are getting notices about them, and do you have any guidance there? Because that would be appreciated.
It will depend on your client. So like I said before, in legacy, if you can't, that may be the easiest way to shorten the consolidation life cycle. But if you can't, you'll want to wait till, so if you have two policies, wait till they both have converted over to the new system, and then you can initiate a consolidation with the new policy consolidation transaction. So, but it can depend on the client. So if they have, a farmhouse, that'll take a little bit longer to get over. You can consolidate as they come over, or you can always wait till they're all over as well. You just won't get that additional expense fee in the butt up front. Wait till the end to consolidate those.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. All right, Sean is asking, what is the best way to create a to-do list of multi-policy combinations?
I mean, not entirely certain what they're asking. But if you're looking for like maybe different policy attributes, like the differences between policies, the listings that we have will give some of those indicators. So if there's ones that have, different billing accounts, different coverage limits that need to be the same on the policy, kind of the ones that you need to work through. I would look at those listings because that I think will help you, maybe guide you through that as well. I would say maybe the effective dates too would help you. I'll try a to-do list. Well, that's would be when to do it, but yeah. I'd say one of the things to keep in mind, I think there's some pointers out there in the frequently asked questions and the documents we'll give later, but looking at the keeper endorsement and making sure that if you're moving that vehicle to another policy, they're not going to lose the keeper endorsement earlier based on the renewal dates, the term dates, is something that I found helpful.
Thank you. All right, our next question comes from Todd. Could you please discuss the correct way to convert an auto if client has 17 auto policies? I know that we want to keep the longest 10-year policy, but are we going to have to convert to the new system until we get that one and then roll all the policies to that old one? So any guidance for Todd there?
Yeah, so let them convert naturally, and you don't need to worry about the tenure. So like they'll go by the client's tenure rather than the policy tenure. That'll register in the past. So just wait till they come over and consolidate those as they come over to PAS, and you don't need to worry about that. That'll also make sure any applicable capping takes effect too. So I would suggest not to rewrite anything manually from legacy over to PAS, even just vehicle ads, because they'll lose that capping.
Thank you. Next question's from Bo. I have a policy converting end of September. Their other policies don't renew until later in the year or early next year. Can I combine them now? And can I add driver ID?
So I'll think kind of what I answered before, wait, until they are over, just because we don't want them to lose that cabin.
I can answer the driver
Yeah,
IQ
it's
one.
driver.
Yeah, so the driver IQ, so when the policies convert, we need to know all of the operators in the household as the policy, as the first policy converts, because we need to be able to count the number of operators and you need to be able to count the number of vehicles. So in the PAS auto system, all of the drivers will be present when the first policy converts. But as you may recall, driver IQ only applies to the policy and the vehicle where the driver is rated. And so if you sign up, like let's say you had 3 drivers and only 1 vehicle converted, after the first, policy converts, and then the next one is bringing, 3 vehicles over. Only the driver that you signed up for that's rated on that first vehicle that converted would actually receive the discount. Now the other 2, you could sign them up for the discount, and they would receive the application and they could begin their driving experience. But the actual driver IQ discount wouldn't apply until the vehicle they're rated on is converted from the legacy system. So they wouldn't realize the discount. So some people are, that's the, I would call it like the weight. Depends on how you'd like to, get those savings when you need to determine which driver is rated on that vehicle, to determine the right one to quote if you're only trying to quote an individual driver. But it will retain the enrollment as the next policy is confirmed.
Okay, thank you so much. There's a lot to this, guys, so we'll do our best to get through these. Sarah says, can I ask about the consolidation process once all of the client's policies are in the new system? I have my first one consolidated just to verify we started the consolidation with the policy that we are moving the vehicles away from, correct? So is that the same thing we're talking about, or what we're?
So this will be the actual transaction.
Okay.
So the policy consolidation transaction, you will want to initiate it on the policy you want to keep. And then it will ask you which policy you want to consolidate from. I would suggest look at our consolidation process. There's like a step-by-step guide on our consolidation SharePoint that's really going to help you lead you through that process as far as what screens you're going to see too.
Great. And for those of you who didn't join us initially, we do have resources at the end of this session today. Just like Rachel said, you're going to have access to everything, your Tableau listings, the SharePoint, the consolidation, and the FAQ. So you're going to have everything at the end of this. So great call out there. Next question is from Sally. What if a farmer has hired a man that only drives semi/farm truck and the system is asking for the hired man's wife's information? Is there a way to bypass this requirement?
So my question is, does the hired man reside at the client's household? So Lindsay, can you help me on this one? Were we asking for that person to be listed on the policy?
Yeah, so if they're driving the vehicle, so in the difference between the systems and legacy, you could list the marital status as single or married, and we didn't match you up. And so we didn't have that information. In Policy Pro, if you're listed as married, it's going to require you to be aligned or assigned to the spouse so that we know that both people are listed. So in this instance, I think it'll depend if that same hired hand has their own personal auto insured with us or not. And if it, as long as it's a separate household, I would say in this case to change the marital status to single on this policy so it doesn't require the spouse because they're not related or driving the farm policies. But that's a very generic statement. There is additional information, I believe, in the FAQs. And if not, if you've got a specific scenario, underwriting would, or click to know would be the next best option.
Thank you, Lindsay and Tom. Okay, so the next question comes from Lacey. If clients have multiple policies and one converts months before the others, is consolidation okay to do when one isn't paid and the other is in the PAS system? Will they lose the 10-year for consolidating?
So yeah, again, wait till they're either consolidate legacy if you can, or wait till they are in PAS. It won't, this situation wouldn't affect their tenure, but again, it would affect the conversion capping that would apply, so we would urge you not to do it in that way.
There is another complication, and it's related to assignable vehicles on the trailing legacy policy. So no matter what, you would absolutely need to have underwriting involved, because what happens is we have a placeholder vehicle that's shown on the vehicle usage page for vehicles in the legacy system that have yet to come over to PAS Auto. And so you could end up with a scenario where there's one of those vehicles listed on that vehicle usage page, and it'll list in parentheses the legacy policy number after it. That's so that we can get an accurate count of the number of vehicles, number of drivers. If you manually add the same exact vehicle onto the vehicles on that PAS Auto, you'll have 3 vehicles counting, and only 2 vehicles in the household, and that's wrong. And so you'd actually be quoting an incorrect premium to your client as well. So we've uncovered another issue with those manual conversions, and so an underwriter would need to get involved as well in order to provide an accurate quote. If you do it yourself, you're not able to provide an accurate quote, and reps are unable to remove those vehicles from the vehicle usage page.
Thank you so much. Our next question is from Adam. Is there anything we need to consider if the first policy in the household to convert is a recreational vehicle? That's there.
Other than you can't add any new vehicles to it. And then if you're consolidating, you won't be able to consolidate to that policy once that second policy comes over. You'll want to consolidate the seasonal vehicle to the semi-annual policy. But Tom, I don't know if you have any other things.
No, I was going to say, and it's likely that that type of policy, depending on the number of vehicles on it, is likely to be subject to capping, depending on the type on it. So because the per policy expense fee is large relative to the premium, it usually gets a pretty big cap fee factor. So that's just to be aware of, that those are the vehicles that are likely policies that are more likely to be capped.
Our next question from Doug. I'm reading this one. It sounds like he's asking that it's not quite, I'll just read it out here. We have been taught about policy consolidation when conversions begin. However, apparently in one of the conversion meetings, we were told that clients do not have to consolidate if they don't want to. How can we explain the consolidation to our clients who have multiple policies and give them the option to consolidate?
So I would highlight the benefits to them. So the main driver for their benefit is going to be reducing the amount of fixed expense fees. So when they come over, you have 3 policies that come over, a number I'm just throwing out there. It will vary. $100 per policy per term. You consolidate 3 down to 1, and that's going to save them $200 just with the fixed expense premium. That's probably going to be your biggest lever to pull with them for that. And then additionally, reducing the amount of paperwork, because in PAS, if you make a change in one policy, it is going to send paperwork out for every single policy. So especially if you have those really large farm clients, you're going to get basically a book every time a policy change happens. So just a few items to take note of when you're having that discussion as well.
Really, the vehicle ownership and the named insured is one of the exceptions for our split policy rule, even on new clients. And so that's one where you may have someone, and I give a legal entity as my typical one, where they may want to keep like AAA, LLC owned vehicles separate from their personal vehicles. And that might be one that a client wishes to retain different name insurance and pay that fixed expense fee because of the liability Limited liability owning only certain vehicles. So there's a difference in ownership interest. And that's where we typically see clients more willing to keep separate policies because they want to keep the ownership interest and control of the policies separate.
Yeah, it'll be kind of client specific to, like obviously clients have different needs on why they want or need the second policy. So there's some client specifics there too.
Okay, thank you. And I know that Margot had a policy specific question that Lindsay was, you addressed that directly, so Margot, that might be handled after the session directly, so I'll save your question. But let's move on to another question that can get to the whole group. Lois is asking, what happens if we missed a household split cleanup prior to conversion?
That's the address thing, Tom.
That was,
I'm guessing that's the listing there, because that was
Yeah.
the cleanup list.
okay.
There's 3 listings on the Tableau site, and one of them was the pre-conversion cleanup listing, which included the niece, special tenants, and in the states that had the 4K billing, those were included on that tab. There's a second tab that was a household split listing, which was household split for multiple addresses. If you happen to have a household that was on that, the household will convert to a single address. And so if that household needed to be split, the process just gets more complex. And what I mean by needed to be split, that's an example is if you had like, maybe the example I typically give is parents live in a household and they had an adult child and maybe the adult child's spouse that lived at that same household, but they moved out. They now have their own renters or owner occupied in a different city. They really should be 2 different households. If you didn't get the split completed before conversion, you can complete that split after conversion, which is a different process, and you have to really pay attention to which vehicles and drivers, need to have that split transaction occur on. You may need to do household maintenance on both the legacy policy and a PAS auto policy in order to get those split. So it's just a little bit more work, or you have to wait till they all convert over and all the policies are in the PAS auto household and then complete the split.
Okay, thank you. Missy's question says that the agent has went into his client listing to the accounts that need cleanup. His name is not listed nor his agent number. Does this mean that we do not have any policies to clean up?
That's exactly what that means.
That's a win. That's a win for Missy's agent there. Fantastic. Let's move forward. All right, next question I see here is from Andrew. When we consolidate policies that are on 2 different AP billing accounts, so we need to do anything with accounts. So that's a specific question.
I would suggest to call the billing contact center. I'm not the billing person. I want to make sure, especially each household will be a little different on what due dates they want to keep. I think it's best to call them to get the best strategy, especially if the dates are so close together. So that's probably my recommendation if you have any type of billing differences between policies.
Yeah, that's about on the draw dates and when they come out. But if you want to, if they're not on the same term dates, so if they're different billing accounts because they have dates that were too far apart, and that's why they had to be on 2 different billing accounts, and you have one of the policies that has the date correct for when you'd like to actually draw the policy, the consolidation can go to that policy and you can end up with one billing account on the date you'd like. If either of those policies meet the date that the client would like to draw. Now, working out when individual draws will come out in those 2 different accounts, that's definitely a billing question, but you can definitely consider 2 different payment options based on the term dates of the policies in the billing accounts.
Okay. Along the same lines, Trent is asking that his client's auto policy converted that was an October 1st renewal. The other auto policy is due to renew October 15th. So how does he get these consolidated, or will that automatically consolidate there? And he does preface that he's a long-time listener, but first-time caller. So be gentle, he just wants to know how he can help this client here.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, you would need to wait till they have processed into PAS. And then you can start the consolidation, policy consolidation transaction. That's in the drop down now. Again, you can reference the materials that are on SharePoint because it'll walk you step by step through that process. It's a pretty simple process, especially just with the two policies. And it'll help you get through it.
And the earliest effective date you could have in that scenario is October 15th, which is the date that both of the policies are active in the new system.
There we go. Okay, thank you. All right, our next question is from Gina. Regarding the 10-year discount, I have clients that just transferred from mutual to preferred. Congratulations to your clients, that's great. For example, their mutual policy has been with us for 20 years, but the preferred policy has been only active for 1 year. How does that work when they should be getting the higher 10-year discount?
This is, we chose to use individual client tenure of the operators, owners in the household. And so it avoided the problem with company to company rewrites. And you will see that the only time that tenure is recalculated is if there is a full lapse over 30 days where that client tenure is reset or the client, leaves country. But company to company rewrite and policy tenure are not what's used in the calculation. It's the longest individual client tenure of the clients on the policy. Auto client tenure. So it's auto tenure that if they had a property policy for 10 years and an auto policy for 5, it is the auto policy tenure that is used for that client.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next question from Jaden. This may have been answered because this was asked 28 minutes ago, guys. We had so many questions flood in the beginning, so I apologize if it's already been addressed unless we were reading through here. Is the billing due date going to change again since conversion means a new policy is in a sense, or does it count? Does it not count as a new policy if there's a conversion?
The policy term dates aren't changing. So the billing due date requirements don't change. The billing due date requirements change was associated to the AMP migration, and accounts that have migrated off of AMP onto the new automatic payments platform will not see a second change. So as long as that policy is on the new automatic payment platform, that the billing date is, that 7-day period, and you could use in the auto conversion guide, there's a link to the billing best practices, and that billing best practices has a calculator that you can use for when those draw dates are. And so that's not changing with conversion. So the billing draw date does not change with the conversion.
Thank you. And then Jude's question, also from 20 minutes ago, so I apologize, Jude, if you already got this answered for you, just to clarify here.
I just answered it.
Did you answer that one?
It was pretty specific, and we had already answered the first part. Or the second part, I guess. I would just maybe reiterate Tom's earlier comment about driver IQ. I think someone asked it earlier and Jude asked it as well, probably before it was even answered, but the driver IQ discount could be added to all drivers when they convert, but only the people that are rated on that policy will see it impact their premium. So if they're still rated, so if the youth or the wife or whomever is still rated legacy, their rates won't go down until they convert, but they can already download the app and so you can just do it all at once. You don't have to wait for all their policies to come over. They can start getting familiar with the app and just make sure you do get the discount from day one on all policies because we didn't have that rating in legacy.
Thank you, Lindsay.
You're welcome.
Our next question coming in is from Trisha. When a conversion policy shows up in your navigator bar to start, say, 30 days. But the legacy policy is still showing as active. If I make a change to add a new vehicle within the legacy policy, is that new vehicle going to automatically show up on the conversion policy, or do I have to make a change to add it to the conversion policy that is not yet active as well?
The advice that we're giving is that you can, it's best to make the vehicle ad on the policy where it's effective. So if it is effective in that 35-day period for the conversion renewal, you cannot add a vehicle prior to that date. Does that make sense? Like the effective date of the vehicle be like, I'll give an example of like today's date. Let's say they bought a new car, 9/11, and they're renewing on 10/1. You would make that add to the legacy policy on 9/11, and then it'll get flagged by underwriting, and they can make that same addition to the PAS auto policy. But I'll tell you the truth is that'll probably take up to 2 weeks for that underwriting team to synchronize that change. If your client needs to know the impact of adding that vehicle, you can also add that vehicle to the PAS auto policy to quote what that would be for that term that begins on October 1st. So the portion of the change for the add vehicle, on the legacy policy would be 11/1 till 10/1, and then the added vehicle on 10/1 to the PAS auto policy, which would be fully rated because it's a new vehicle added, would be accurately quoted if you added it yourself as well. So I'm just saying that
Yeah,
will be coordinated by underwriting, but you need to know the premium right away. You can quote it yourself.
and I think that we all understand the client wants to know that premium right away, right? So that's great advice there if you're trying to get that answered ahead of time while waiting for that system change to do that on the back end. So, okay, thank you. We have reviewed our household split list and are not sure why we split the household in phase or just let it convert separately.
Yeah, they'll convert to one address, one location address, and they have different mailing addresses associated to the policies that have the different addresses. It's not an issue if that's the case. So like if it's different mailing addresses, that's what they have, or they happen to have, a house right next door to the next house. I mean, it's like there's a lot of scenarios where the client folder in legacy is set up accurately, and we just happen to have a couple different mailing addresses. So definitely no action is required on those. They'll be converted to a single location address upon conversion, and no action is required. It's when somebody has moved out and is no longer a part of that household that we're asking you to complete that. It's just very difficult to differentiate in the legacy system between those two cases.
Thank you. And then Jerica had a question about billing. Rachel, did you see that question yet?
I did, and that's gonna be a question that Billing's gonna probably have to walk it. I know Jerica, we've had conversations. I know they have the larger clients. It's really gonna be best to go to Billing to get that strategy. I don't know their limitations on certain things, so I don't want to give you the wrong answer there.
No, I appreciate you speaking to that, Rachel. So thank you, Jerica, for the question. Sorry, we can't get to that one right now. Emma says, I have a client who has about 4 auto policies. 2 are in the middle of converting. The client is divorcing. And we split him and his wife onto their own policies. Do you believe there's an easier way to do this since 2 of the policies are converting? Or is there something that I need to look at before splitting and that I should keep in mind? Any advice for Emma on that situation?
Yeah, so I would suggest that you complete the household maintenance request on both the legacy policies and on the PAS auto policies, so that we can give the best instructions to the folks that are helping with that household maintenance. And then we can make sure to get those client folders and addresses updated appropriately once those, addresses are updated. So like definitely follow that household maintenance process, especially with those legacy policies not being involved.
All right. Next one is, I have consolidated clients' multiple audit policies, household, and saw that there are 2 policies available to convert. Do I have to convert each one individually? These are 2 available policies and the 2 share the same term dates. So will that automatically happen?
So it won't so they will automatically convert over to the new system, and then if you want to consolidate, you will still need to initiate that transaction, but that's probably best case scenario, having the same term date, that's gonna make a lot of things a lot easier.
But if you have 3 policies, it'll require 2 consolidation transactions. So 1 for each policy that you need to combine down.
Okay. Thank you, Melody, for that question. All right, next is from Christy. If there are already enrolled in Driver IQ, do they have to re-enroll? I believe.
No, they're not required to re-enroll, and it will retain that enrollment as additional policies convert.
Some good question, Christy. All right, Tina is asking, was there training on consolidating the auto? And if so, will there be any more trainings?
We did do some road shows, but I don't know who was invited to which road shows. So we didn't have anything outside of that. We do have lots of resources and material, as well as like some training videos that are on our consolidation SharePoint that show like premium impacts depending on the scenario, items like that. So there's lots of resources out there for you to walk through, but if you need assistance, I'm always available to help too.
Okay, thank you. Looks like Dana has a question specific to the good student discount. She gave some stats as far as what Click to Know says that a good student is. There's 3 criteria there as far as the discount being maintained till 25. Between the 20 and 25, that no research is required. But she also read that recertification for the discount is required each year until college graduation. So the question here is specific to that. Is there a difference between the good student rate and the graduate degree rates as far as the system?
There is a slightly higher discount for the good student graduate degree with grades. So like there is a rating table that you can look at that has the individual states on it. The recertification is separate from the amount of the discount. But yes, it applies up until age 25. And the recertification requirements only require 1 certification after the age of 20. But if the client receives, like I'll call it like a graduate degree in between 20 and 25, you can't submit that graduate degree and, update the policy account. And then that's worth it, from a client perspective.
Okay. Very good question. Thank you. All right, so Jake is asking for farm-related vehicles that are part-time for hire. How are we managing the ICC filings and mileage discrepancies between the legacy system and the PAS system? Legacy allowing 5,000 annual mileage and PAS only allowing 2,000. And nowhere to put the ICC. What steps are in place to ensure that the ICC filings are completed accurately? Would that be to the farm resource?
Might have to take that like on December, I could talk with the farm auto underwriters and maybe discuss that with them.
Okay, thank you, Jake. Looks like we're gonna get back to you on that one.
Yeah,
So
from a conversion, I know from a conversion eligibility perspective that if it's not eligible, that we have procedure in place to adjust the mileage to meet the eligibility requirements in order to rate it. So if there's something that's required outside of that, we definitely have to have a conversation with underwriting.
Okay, thank you. I know we've got several questions left, guys. I'm going to do my best to get through 1 or 2 more before we move to final thoughts and then resources. If we don't address your question in this session, we do have a system in place to get those questions answered. and put back into the chat right later so that you can see the answers to the unanswered questions. So really appreciate you guys using the Q&A with us today. It looks like this next question is very specific for Christine. I had a client recently who their conversion started on 8/19. She added the car on 8/20. Then the actual conversion hits on 8/25. Policy automatically went through the conversion, and she spoke with underwriting about it and was told that it normally just goes through. Or can hit and go to underwriting. This is kind of a specific long one. I don't know if we want to take this
Yeah,
one.
no, I can tell you that they would do a claim reconstruction to prove that the vehicle was added onto the legacy policy and there would be coverage for that client. And so this is just a policy synchronization, and that's what I said, that 2-week time window is the service level agreement that we have with underwriting, that they would get that vehicle added within 2 weeks. And if there was an issue beyond that 2-week period, let's say it didn't get added, we would still identify that the client added the new vehicle on the legacy policy. And, it's not going to be a coverage issue. We just need to make sure that we get it onto the policy and rated. But if you have a specific example, then we can follow up with underwriting on that.
So the last question I'm going to take right now for this live session, before we go to final thoughts and resources, is from Jessica. So Jessica asked, when a client has an auto policy with an annual premium, will all auto policies be annual or semi-annual once they are on the new policy number? The annual policy is the one that has converted first for the one I've seen so far.
Yeah,
And
so
it's
the
often
policy terms are retained upon conversion. And so if it was annual in legacy, it should stay annual as it converts. Semi-annual. You just happen to have the annual one come first. Once the semi-annual one comes over and you wanted to consolidate, you consolidate only to the semi-annual, and that annual, would not be allowed to be consolidated.
All right. Thank you. Now, we're nearing the end of time. So I want to say, is there any final thoughts from Lindsay or Tom or Rachel that you want to add before we move into the SharePoint and the resources?
We're adding a new section to the SharePoint that includes some, I'll call it like more frequently asked questions or trending topics, so that we can add additional information that we're seeing on a regular basis come in from various, I'll call it like methods. So either through underwriting, through our feedback form, or through emails, and we're trying to capture those and publish them for you to be able to access from the auto conversion guide. And you'll see a new set of questions, which include rate capping and the recent rate changes and things like that, are right at the very top of that newly published a link to a FAQ that's available through the auto conversion SharePoint.
Awesome. We will include those in just a moment in the discussion for the Q&A. So for right now, let's go ahead and take a look at the SharePoint, because I know that we have referenced a lot of things today that would be here for you to find, and I know you'll find them very useful. So this SharePoint page is full of information intended to make this process as smooth as possible for you. Let's just call out a few of these sections right now. First, we have the content section. This is going to be full of the actual changes and scenarios that may occur and how you can really handle those for your client. Next, you're going to see the auto conversion resources. This is where you're going to find those actual playbooks and the auto conversion econs, some relevant good to know articles, and a Tableau report that I referenced earlier too, where you can see those, as well as Detroit Forest Fires Rate Action Guide. Super helpful to take a look at that. We also have our policy consolidation tab, and this has been important for this entire process. As you saw, Rachel was very busy talking about policy consolidation questions today, so this is your hub to go through for all things consolidation. right there where the arrow is. And then finally, there is a section devoted specifically to that farm auto area. So if you have those questions, I know a couple came up today in our session. This is where you're gonna wanna go to get those answered as well. As we move to this page, these are live links, and I know that Nicole Good's gonna drop some of these links as well as that new FAQ page in the auto conversion links for us in the chat for you in a moment. But here is the very top, that's the SharePoint that I just walked through. Okay, so that's where you're gonna find all of those things right there. Next is that ADP migration toolkit. So this is gonna be everything about that automatic monthly payments migration. So I got a couple questions related to that today as well. And then for those of you who have rates on your mind, okay, have questions specific to that rate, we said earlier that that's handled on the market level by your PLMM. So that third live link right there, it says PCO market managers. That's where you're gonna find out who you can reach out to level to get that answer. So through your PLMM. All right. Now I know that there are several questions that we were not able to get to today. Again, we do have a process getting all of the unanswered questions addressed and put back into the published Q&A for you. So what's going to happen here in the coming days is we will work on the back end with Lindsay, Tom, Rachel, and all of our back end teams here on the product line. And we're going to get those questions that were not addressed today answered and put back into this this meeting. And what it's going to do is it's going to ping you with a notification when it's ready. Okay, so I want you to know that it might not be tomorrow, but in the coming days, we will be working hard on that to get those all answered for each day. There are a lot of questions, which means that you are all busy taking care of the people. And I really appreciate you and taking the time today to get your questions answered. Huge thanks to our subject matter experts today, Tom, Lindsay, and Rachel. Really appreciate you taking the time to, out of your busy schedule, to sit here and answer these questions and address the big issues. I know that you have done a lot of work to make this as smooth as possible.